This tape has been compiled to give you a preview of the construction tapes for the RotorWay EXEC 162F helicopter. You will note that each section is identified at the beginning by a number, followed by the materials and references that will be needed to complete that section. This preview consists of excerpts from the construction tapes only. A lot of detail has been taken out. For example, the 8 minutes of sample video in Section 2 was taken from roughly 20 minutes of the master tape. The tapes are designed to help the first-time builder complete their kit to the highest standards and to do so in the shortest possible time.
This section will instruct the builder to drill and cut the bushings in the airframe to the correct size, mount the landing gear to the skids, level the airframe on the landing gear, mount the airframe to the landing gear, tap and install body support pads, and fabricate the battery strap. Locate the following components. Reference construction prints E10 2000 airframe landing gear and E16 2000 directional control. These are the skid tubes. Note, the rear of the skid will have the smallest bend. This is the rear landing gear. This is the front landing gear. And these are the 4 skid end plugs. The first step in this section is to mount the landing gear to the skid tubes. To locate the position of the rear landing gear on the skid tubes, reference construction print E10 2000. It shows the rear edge of the landing gear shoe should be 15 3/4 inches from the rear end of the skid tube. Using a tape measure, make a mark on both skids at the proper location. Position the skid tubes on the floor. Note, make sure the skid tube with the steel insert, located on the front tip, is on the passenger side. Mount the rear landing gear on the skids so that the rear edge of the shoe is on the mark. Slide a hose clamp over the rear of the shoe to prevent the landing gear from falling over. You may find it necessary to use a C-clamp to squeeze the skid tube into the shoe. Cut a 7/8 inch thick board the same length of a landing gear shoe and mark 7/8 inch from both ends. Place this board next to the shoe and use a center punch to mark the hole location. It is important to check the position of the shoe on the skid, the rotation of the skid tube, and that the reinforced skid is on the passenger side before doing any drilling. For best results, mark both sides and drill with a sharp 1/4 inch drill bit from both sides, then pass the drill through. Install the 1/4 inch by 2 3/8 inch bolts and fiber lock nuts and remove the hose clamps. Cut a board to fit between the shoes of the front landing gear. Now, position the front landing gear on the skids and be sure to align the rear of the shoe with the marks on the skids. Clean the end of the skids and plugs, checking for burrs on anything that would prevent the plugs from being installed. Use a file to remove any burrs. Install the plugs by driving them in with a large mallet or a hammer on a block of wood until they are all the way in, to the shoulder of the plug. This is the landing gear mounted to the skid tubes. The 162F airframe. Located on each side of the airframe near the front are bushings for the front landing gear attachments. Drill the bushings with a sharp 1/4 inch drill bit. Use plenty of cutting oil while drilling. Before mounting the airframe to the landing gear, you will need to check to see if the tail boom braces will make a difference in the lateral square tube angle when they are bolted in place or when they are removed. With the tail boom braces installed, level the rear square tube laterally on the floor or table. Remove the braces and check to see if the square tube is still level laterally. If there is a change in the angle, make note of the difference. With the 2 tail boom supports removed from the airframe, have someone help you or pick up the airframe in this way and place the rear of the airframe on the rear landing gear as shown. With the airframe sitting on the landing gear, you will need to check the angle of the square drive tubes with a level. If necessary, you will need to grind away some of the bracket or shim between the bracket and the landing gear tube. The shims may be from a 20,000th of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch thick to achieve the angles called for on the square drive tubes. Note: if more than a 1/4 inch of shims are required, contact RotorWay customer service. Remember, all of the weight of the helicopter must be on the 3/8 inch bolts. If the bracket rests on the landing gear tube, it will eventually wear through the tube and cause it to break. When checking the square tube angle, you must remember to compensate for the difference, if any, when you remove the tail boom braces. When the front of the airframe is held down, you will notice that the airframe bushings need to be shortened. Mark the bushings, then remove the airframe and cut the bushings so the airframe will go between the brackets. Use a file to square off the ends of the bushings. Use a 1/4 inch bolt to check the ends of the bushings. To verify the end of the bushing is 90 degrees to the hole, make sure the head of the bolt is making contact with the end of the bushing all the way around. Now lower the front of the airframe between the front landing gear attachment brackets. This should be a snug fit. Place a 20,000th inch shim between the front landing gear and the airframe on each side. Use clamps to hold in position. Use C-clamps to hold the airframe to the landing gear in the correct position. Do not place a clamp where it will interfere with the drilling and mounting bolts. Note: Before drilling any holes in the brackets, make the following checks. Make sure the skids are level. Check to see that there's proper clearance around the brackets and the landing gear tubes. Make sure that the rear square drive tube is level laterally when the braces are installed. The fore and aft square drive tube should have a 4 1/2 degree downward tilt towards the front. Also check that the airframe is sitting on the landing gear straight. Use a sharp 3/8 inch drill bit and locate the center of the hole in the rear gear bracket. Then use a smaller bit to make a pilot hole. Then follow with a 3/8 inch bit. Hold the tail boom braces by the hole and determine if any material needs to be ground off the square corners on the ends. Then install the 3/8 inch bolts and the supplied fiber lock nuts. With a clamp holding it in position, drill a 1/4 inch bolt hole in the front landing gear attachment, using the bushing as a guide, and install the bolts. Next, drill the 1/4 inch rear landing gear bolt holes and install the bolts. The landing gear bolted to the airframe and skid tubes. Referring to construction print E16-2000, locate and grind the 4 bushings in the front airframe cross tube so they extend about 1/4 inch above the tube into the tap bushings using a 5/16 inch jam nut on each. This section will instruct the builder to drill the ground handling wheel shaft and mount the wheels. This section will also demonstrate the proper ground handling techniques. Locate the following components. Note, the cotter pins and flat washers for the wheel mounting are taped to the ground handling weldment. Reference construction prints E37-2000 ground handling wheels. To verify the hole location for the cotter pin, install the wheel and washer on the shaft. Mark and drill the 1/8 inch hole in the shaft end. Install the wheel and 5/8 inch washer. Then install and bend the cotter pin to prevent the wheel from coming off the shaft. The ground handling wheels enable the ship to be easily moved on the ground. Install the shaft of each ground wheel assembly at each rear brake shoe. Pressing down on the handle will raise the rear part of the skid and use the ground handling wheel hook to latch in place. Always keep your hand on the top of the J-hook to prevent your fingers from being smashed in the event the welds break or the handle slips out of your hand.
This section will instruct the builder on the construction of tunnel inspection doors, mounting tail boom to airframe, mounting horizontal and vertical trim fins, fabrication and installation of the tail rotor assembly. This section will be subdivided into 4 parts. Locate the following components for the first part of this section. Reference construction print E09-2000 tail boom. Referring to construction print E09-2000, it shows that the tunnel inspection doors are 13 3/4 inch in length. From the supplied material, measure and cut the 2 doors to the proper length. Referring to the construction print, mark the hole locations of the Zeus buttons as shown. Hand form the radius of the inspection doors to match the tail boom with a large diameter pipe. When satisfied with the radius, locate and drill 1/8 of an inch holes for clecos. Drill one hole at a time, then cleco that hole, then drill the next hole. Remember that the hole for the Zeus button will be 3/8 of an inch, so make sure the hole location is not too close to the edge of the tail boom door opening or the removable door panel. Install Zeus buttons when satisfied with fit. Refer to Section 1, Construction Practices on Proper Installation of Zeus buttons, grommets, and springs. The second part of this section is mounting the tail boom to the airframe. Locate the following components and parts. Reference construction print E09-2000. Note, when mounting the tail boom to the airframe, be sure to hold the measurement to the square drive tube and also hold the correct tail boom angle. Try to use the same level for all the angles that are to be checked. The quality of level or protractor used during the construction process can greatly affect the results of the project. Care should be taken to utilize the most accurate tools available for positioning. The aircraft's center line can be found by using the center of the forward cross tube and the center of the cross tube at the rear of the airframe where the tail boom support tubes are attached. Note, the end of the tail boom attachment brackets should be radiused slightly before installation. Notice the two brackets with a greater angle are the upper brackets. Insert the tail boom attachment brackets into the airframe. Use a quick grip clamp to help draw the tail boom forward. Make a loop with a piece of string to go around the tail boom end and hang the plumb from the string as shown. With the tail boom inside all four attachment brackets, center the end of the tail boom over the center line string. Check to ensure that the flat part of the tail boom attachment brackets are over the ears in the number 1 bulkhead and the flat extends beyond the front of the bulkhead. Use C-clamps to hold the tail boom in place until the bolt holes are drilled and the bolts are installed. Before drilling any bolt holes in the tail boom attachment brackets, perform the following checks and measurements. Number 1, check the vertical alignment of bulkhead number 1 and number 4. 2, check that the flat part of the tail boom attachment brackets are over the ears of number 1 bulkhead and the flat extends beyond the front of the bulkhead. 3, measure the angle of the square tubes fore and aft and add 2.5 degrees to verify the angle of the top of the tail boom. 4, measure the distance from the back edge of the square drive tube to the front of number 1 bulkhead and verify it is between 22.5 inches to 23 inches. Locate, drill, and install the tail boom bracket bolts per the construction print. Locate per the construction print E17-2000 the parts to fabricate the tail rotor slider assembly. There are 2 stringers riveted together to form each slider rail. This animation shows how the fabricated parts are configured. Study the construction prints carefully for the correct dimensions as you fabricate the parts of the tail rotor slider assembly. Position the pitch horns on the blade spars. Install the blades and pitch horns on the pitch pins with the supplied bolts. Note, blades must be forced out against the thrust bearings so that they will be in the same position as if forced out by centrifugal force when in flight. Using the tail rotor pulley and collider assembly as counterbalance, place tail rotor shaft and blades on balanced device. Balance the blades horizontally. Balance the tail rotor vertically. This section will instruct the builder to temporarily install the main rotor shaft, the foot pedal shaft, fit the body to the airframe, and the installation of the doors and their hardware. Refer to construction print E32-2000, EXEC 162F, body details. Many of the body panels have pre-drilled master cleco holes. Preassemble the entire body with clecos before attaching any nut plates or Zeus fasteners. This gives you the opportunity to shift or relocate components somewhat if there is any unacceptable mismatch. Any unused alignment holes may be filled with Bondo. This is the EXEC 162F tub as received from RotorWay. The tub requires 4 areas that need to be cut out for the front and rear landing gear. This is the seat back and interior liners as received from RotorWay. Install the seat back on the airframe. Locate the master holes and install 2 clecos that hold the tub to the seat back on each side. This is the floor pan as received from RotorWay. Set the floor pan on the airframe. Secure the front of the tub to the floor pan with clecos in the master holes. These are the front upper fuselage cowlings as received from RotorWay. Use clecos in the master holes to install these cowlings. These are the rear upper fuselage cowlings as received from RotorWay. Install as shown. These are the rear lower fuselage cowlings as received from RotorWay. They have scribed areas that need to be cut out. Hold in place to verify where the opening for the rear landing gear should be. Open the cutouts for the rear landing gear only as much as necessary. Cleco the panels with the master holes. The panels should fit evenly all around the tail boom. This is the roof panel as received from RotorWay. Use the same measurement to install the cabin roof panel. This will ensure that the body is in the correct width in that area. Place the windscreen on the body and position it for best fit. Position the doorpost in the floor pan joggle. Secure the doorpost with a cleco when the desired fit is achieved. Lay out and drill the holes for the seat back to the body panels. As per the construction print, you'll notice that the screws and nut plates are 2 1/2 inches on center, and the Zeus fasteners are 5 inches on center. This is the doghouse panels as received from RotorWay. Place the doghouse front panel on top of the body so that the screws can be spaced around the edges of the doghouse in that area. Install the rear doghouse panel. Check the swash plate clearance around the doghouse opening. Trim and fit the doghouse as necessary, then install remaining clecos. Note, do not locate a Zeus fastener where it would come in contact with the actuator fork. Doors and stiffeners as received from RotorWay. Hold the plexiglass door against the stiffener so that it extends beyond the stiffener all the way around the door. Draw a line parallel to the bottom of the door, 7 inches from the bottom edge. This will be the location of the bolt to hold the hinges to the door. Place the cardboard around the door opening. Hold the door in the opening and drill 1 hole in the part of the hinge on the door post. Open the door. If the hinges do not try to move, they are in alignment. Drill the remaining hole and install the bolts. Note the rear door latch uses a pin through the door for outside locking. At this point, the body has been assembled and fitted, with only minor details remaining. Zeus fasteners and nut plates should be installed in all panels.